Hello everyone, a very good morning. Today we are here from DSAI and COE conducting a very important webinar, which is the talk of the moment, how to secure your applications, because everyone is on the digital mode today. So the seminar topic is API security webinar with accelerating security technology, entrepreneurship and research. So here we have four of the speakers with us. And the moderator is Mr. Akash Mahajan from Mapseco. We have Mr. Anshu Saxena from Haldos, Mr. Tapendra from Secure Blink, and Mr. Mohan from Protect AI. Mr. Akash will be moderating this session. Over to you now, sir.
Great. Thank you so much, Niharika. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's my pleasure to welcome the panelists to this session. I think it's a very interesting topic, and why do we need application and API security? Why is this relevant today? We'll hear from the panelists. We have a good session planned, and we also intend to open it up for questions towards the end, right? I think we're still waiting for Manoj to come in. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Mohan.
Oh, Mohan to come in. Sorry, Mohan of Product AI. Should we give it a minute?
Okay.
Till then, I
We
think
can start.
Anshul, you're joining us from Delhi. Tapendra, where are you right now, based?
Yeah, I'm in Noida only.
Oh, okay, cool. So both of you are battling natural elements. I'm in Bangalore
Yes.
right now, and Niharika, I guess you're also based in NCR.
Yes, sir, I'm from NCR.
Okay. We'll just give it 1 minute before we start. I think it'll be useful for all of us to be visible.
Also, one more thing, there will be questions. So last 10 minutes for our audience, you can just post your questions in the chat box and I'll convey to the speakers.
Perfect. So yeah, Niharika will be with us for the all 90 minutes, and that way she can facilitate this. What we're trying to accomplish today, is like get a really good wide perspective of API security, right? And what these founders think about it, because they're all building innovative products in this space. They all come at it from a different points of view, and that's the big one. Understanding that why we need so much of different perspective when it comes to API and application security. So we'll give them an opportunity to kind of introduce themselves and their product. They're the best people to kind of explain who they are, what they're building, and we'll time it so that we stay on time. We'll ask each one of them to kind of delve into and go in depth into like, hey, why is this so critical in this day and age? Why do we, why should the people joining in care about it? And people in their life should care about it. And we'll then jump to like when the APIs are not secure from their professional life without giving us too much of confidential details. Can they share their experience of the worst breach they have seen, they have experienced, and what was the impact, right? And we'll try and get more personal there. Now that we know it's critical in the webinar, and then we know that how bad things can get, it's obvious that and reasonable to ask them, hey, what's the way to mitigate, or what's the way to think about security? Because this is where it's really key. Like, what innovation are they doing? What's the research? What's their research telling them? And this is actually the longest segment. Oh, Mohan is here.
Hey, hi. I can
Great.
quickly start with, yeah. Can you hear me first?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's all started. It's broadcasting. So just started the introductions. We'll come to you. Thank you so much
Great.
for joining us. Figuring out whatever the technical difficulties are there.
Yes.
Once we have their answers on what's the most effective mitigation methods, then we'll ask them like a rapid fire. give us like one or two things that an organization needs to like really think about and worry about. And I'm hoping that their answers will reflect the problems they are solving, because that's where the real the valuable experience comes in, and enriches it for all of us. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. Please feel free to keep posting your questions in the chat box. In the last 20 odd minutes, along with Niharika, we'll be able to like figure out uh, that what are the questions we can answer. If you have questions for specific panelists, that's fine. Just make sure you mention that, and it'll be always good if you can mention your name and your organization when you're asking the question. It always just makes it more personal. Great. I think we are already a couple minutes in, so let's get started without getting into too much of intro. I think we're all here on a Saturday morning. We know that application and API security is important, critical. My experience of this is that I'm building a cloud security product. So I know that most of the APIs and applications that everyone is building and hosting is in the public cloud. That's where the real action is. But public cloud is an interesting beast. You have the APIs that we call data plane APIs. The end user who's building on the cloud using it, and the cloud itself is basically a bunch of software services built together. It looks like cloud to you, but it's actually software at the back end. It's all virtualized, which means that there are some control plane APIs. So the cloud providers have interesting challenges of giving access, letting people do whatever they want, and also keeping reliable, resilient services up and running based on API. That's my interest in this, and that's where I got interested in like understanding APIs. So I think APIs exist everywhere. Modern software cannot exist without them. So that's why I want to like get the founders to introduce themselves and their product, simply because they have a viewpoint and they're building accordingly. So I'm going to invite each one of you here to speak on this. I'll just call out your name. You can please introduce yourself and your product, and that sets the tone for the questions that follow. Right? On my screen, I can see Tapendra first. So Tapendra, I'll go with you. Why don't you just give us an introduction and tell us more about why do you think API is important and what are you building?
Sure. All right. Thanks a lot for having me here. So hi everyone. I'm Tapendra Dey, founder and CEO of SecureBlink. So I'm representing the company working in the application and API security, and we have developed our own product with the name ThreadSpy. So my journey so far is quite a roller coaster one. So being in the entrepreneur since last 6+ years now. So started up as the normal security consultant and working as a CTOs to a couple of companies, and then after that more like a security researcher. So this was my previous roles. So in during that period only, like my the more expertise lies on the applications and the API layers only. So I used to like develop a lot of things there, and that's where like we have identified like there is still a lot of gap, and we need some more efficient products to come into play. So from where we started up building this product, and we call it as a developer first AppSec management platform. So the focus is only on the developers with this platform, like because they are the ones who develop any new applications, they are the ones who are going to fix them. So we try to keep everything so simple, like they don't need to rely on any security professionals for basic security testing of their applications and APIs both, and the whole interface, the way like we are created this product. So it's being like focusing on them mainly. So we in this product, like what we do, like we have automated the whole operations when it comes from identification, initial vulnerabilities in the applications in place. Then we are prioritizing them on the very efficient frameworks like reachability on top of CVSS. And then the remediation side, which is again the biggest challenge for the whole industry till now. So detection, everyone is doing this like in all the different products. But what about the remediation? That's where like we have seen the mean time to remediate it's still too long, and organizations face a lot of attacks during that span only. So we try to make our models around it, which helps the teams to get stack oriented remediations. So we check like what is the technology used by our applications, your APIs, and on that basis, we are in a more better condition to give you the suggested remediations for those particular gaps. Now we are in a phase of introducing an LLM model on top of it, where we can like even generate the direct snippets of the code, so which will help them to fix the vulnerabilities more fast and more easily. So this is what like that we are building around our product. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tapendra, for that intro. He's tackling the problem right at the heart of it. Developers build the software which is going to use APIs, create APIs with others, with use partners, vendors, end users, B2B, B2C, G2C, all the
Yeah.
acronyms. So super. And the fact that you're working on remediations is always the tough one,
Yeah.
right? So really good to see that happening. Anshul, do you want to go next? Because I see you next in my screen.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this Saturday, and thanks Akash for setting the stage. So I'm Anshul. I'm CEO and founder of Holdos. We are an enterprise application security and delivery solution provider. So my experience has been like over 15 years in engineering and security domain. And my last stint was with Amazon Web Services, where I was doing DDoS mitigation and API and application security. So AWS Shield and AWS WAF were two of the products that I was involved in from engineering point of view. And then I came back in 2015 to start Holdos with the intention of doing the same thing all over again. So today this is my second stint in doing these things. So as Holders, the name suggests, we are halting denial of service attacks. So we do network security with anti-DDoS and WAN load balancers. Then we do application security and reliability with the application delivery controller, which is a server load balancer and a global server load balancer combined together. And of course, on the AppSec side, we have web application and API protection, along with our own web security scanner that scans the application and allows us to patch those applications through the web application and API protection solution. And finally, since the COVID era, we also introduced SSL VPN and DNS firewall solution to ensure that people working from home can remotely connect to their prod environment and carry out necessary changes. So looking at AppSec or an app development across the entire spectrum from identifying your posture, security posture, to detecting attacks and remediation. Lastly, I would like to add that what we do it for government enterprise. So we have appliance-based solutions as well. We also give it as a virtualized solution. So people who are doing in private cloud, they can also leverage the same solution. And we also run our own managed SaaS service, which we give it completely managed um, with a simple DNS change, and we can onboard any application and secure them. So that's a little bit about myself. Looking forward to the session.
Great. Thanks, Anshul. I don't think that was a little bit at all, but thanks so much. Just to summarize what Tapendra was doing for developers, Anshul is like, hey, I'll work at the other end at runtime when the application is deployed and potential for attack is the highest. That's what I'm going to tackle first. And while they may be doing other things, but I think primarily a scanner is for after the fact, which is where majority of the testing effort is always, right? Because it's easy to find people who are trained in that after the application deployed rather than being able to train all developers and engineers. But a tough one, solving for denial of service. It's a very tough problem. I have done that in the past for a bunch of my customers, and I know from my limited experience how tough it was. But when you're building and engineering for Shield, that's another beast, right? That's like you have to have near real-time latency, and that's what you can do. So fun fact, one of the bypasses that my co-founder found in Most of the cloud WAFs was that if you prepend a large amount of data in a request, beyond a certain point, that request is not checked by a WAF, right? It's just the nature of how these online WAFs are, and there are bypasses, but then there are the mitigations, and it's almost like a cat and mouse game. So
Always a cat and
great, yeah. So really good to, looking forward to hearing from him from the trenches of what he has seen. He was just telling me before we started that something is happening right now. I don't know if he'll share more details there, but we'll see. Great. That gets me to Mohan, right? I'm sorry, where there was a switch in the presenter, so I don't really have a background on you, but I'm sure you'll do justice to your intro and tell us more about what Product AI is doing. Go on.
Great. Thanks for having me here on a wonderful Saturday morning. I know possibly I'm the last swap. All of a sudden we had to switch. Manish, who's our founder and CEO, was supposed to join this session, but unfortunately he couldn't able to make. So myself, Mohanraj Silvaraj, one of the co-founder, and I'm looking after the engineering and product development. So basically, we have our own research and development center at Chennai. So, we are nurturing the engineers to focus on specifically the mobile application security. So, we were the first ever, organization in India to protect the mobile application security. So, technically, there are a lot of organizations developing the mobile application, a sensitive mobile application. If we talk about sensitive organizations, the BFSI organizations, they do a lot of mobile application development, but typically the developers coming from the background where how they can do a UI UX, right? So mobile application developers focus will remain more on the business logic and UI UX. They don't have the complete background about how security works for the mobile application. So typically the endpoint security. So we enhance and elevate the security posture of sensitive mobile applications. So today we are working with almost about 60 plus sensitive mobile applications coming from various banks and insurance organizations. We are working with Indian Army as well. So typically we help them to enhance their security posture, right? So we do a lot of endpoint security. So since we are talking about the API security, that is our the focus topic for today. We make sure that, let's say, somebody who's trying to exploit the existing vulnerabilities on the mobile devices and mobile applications, we prevent it, right? So any hackers, the intentional hacker who's trying to break the APIs, the break the entire system. So when we talk about all this BFSI, it is well connected. Everything is working through API. If we try to make sure on the endpoint nobody is exploiting or trying to break the security, right? So we elevate the security posture of the BFSI applications.
Great. That was super useful. It is definitely a critical infrastructure piece, right? And uh, sets the tone for what's coming next. My next question is, for all the panelists, like, why is API security so critical in this day and age? And I use the word API interchangeably with applications, right? But because most applications can't really exist without API, they can't really collaborate and talk to other things. So I'm going to start by posing it to each one of you, and maybe we can go in the reverse direction this time. We're trying to keep this one a little short. We started it a few minutes behind time, so maybe in 2 minutes, Mohan, maybe you can give us, like, I heard you, what the product you're building, you're doing, you're solving a certain way because you believe the attacks are coming a certain way, but can give us a general idea why security is so critical for API. And while you were introducing your products and you're talking about a company, I was okay with all the keywords and the jargons you were using. But let's assume that the audience is mixed. So try to
Yeah,
keep the keywords to the minimum, please.
sure. I'll
So great.
yeah,
Let's
I'll try
give it
to
a
keep it
shot.
as
Let's try
yeah,
it.
I'll try to keep it as layman as possible.
Perfect.
Uh, so yes, what is the reason for doing or enhancing the API security, right? So what is the main objective for any organization to make sure their APIs are secured? We carry a lot of information, so technically we call it payload, the API payload, right? So there are a lot of personal information of the users that we carry. starting from somebody's mobile number to email address. In India, we are using Aadhaar. All those informations are very sensitive in nature, right? So the potential data leakage is the most important thing. When we talk about the API security, it should not allow others, the intruders, the attackers, to manipulate and further modify. So if I have to take a simple example, let's say I try to log in for myself, Mohan, and there is someone who's an attacker, right? So after I log in, there is something called account takeover, right? So account takeover is simple that I try to take someone else's session, the login session. It's a hijacking in itself, right? So typically the API should make sure you are not leaking any data, any sensitive data that you are carrying through the payload. And second, the session with which the user is logged in is not getting hijacked. These all are the basic security which we have to ensure at the endpoint level. There are a lot of other aspects to it, but the data leakage plays the very important role. Like you should ultimately make sure that the data that you are carrying is not intercepted, not manipulated, modified.
Got it. So whenever two systems are talking to each other, they're able to do that in a manner that no attacker, no one,
Yeah,
knowingly or unknowingly is able to get a peek inside that, hey, this is the
yeah,
Aadhaar or this is the OTP or whatever it is, right? Whatever that
yes.
sensitive thing is. Perfect. Okay. I think that was a good summary for the mixed crowd. Anshul, why do you think APIs are important, but why are you like solving it by solving DOS?
Right. So, see, the first and foremost thing is that if you talk about any organization, be it in manufacturing, be it in IT, or in any other vertical like pharmaceutical, hospitality, everything is a web application. They have an IT department. They have applications which are internet facing. So obviously, if you have something which is internet facing, you have an exposure, and that exposure needs to be protected. Uh, we have about a billion websites on the public internet. I'm not talking about the dark web. And yeah, the estimates suggest that about 90% of them have some of the other known security vulnerabilities, whereas the remaining 10%, whatever security controls they have, they are vulnerable because the 90% are vulnerable. And I'll give you with an example. So one of the things that Mohan mentioned was about account takeover. So how you go about doing it, if you look at a normal person today, we still believe in passwords and we use it on a day-to-day basis, right? So you're using the same. Most of the users, end up having similar or the same password across multiple different applications. If one of them gets compromised, an attacker has your username and password, he only needs to replay it across different other applications, which may be protected, but just because that one organization got compromised, the others, their account and others is also compromised. And that is the state of what is going on. So the other aspect I wanted to bring out was, if you look at it from the government perspective, because government is a big investor in cybersecurity, it is the need of the hour, and CERT is playing a very critical role, and we work with the government organizations quite a lot. So uh, there is a drive with the current regime to focus on digitization efforts. So we have the India stack over the past decade or so, and it is growing and maturing, and we are onboarding new services, giving services directly to the citizens, and we are still yet to catch up. So Singapore is number one at the moment, and we are somewhere around 30 in the world, and we are still catching up, and we're catching up rapidly. So there's massive digital infrastructure which is getting created, from smart cities to various Aadhaar based services and so on, and like Coven portal, which is now used by 36 countries across the globe. So the security of that during COVID time frame. Now there's UN, which is for keeping details of children's vaccination, and the entire card that we carry for kids today on a paper, everything will be digitized now and centrally available. So schemes like that, right? So obviously, with greater degree of digitalization, there's greater exposure, and hence application security becomes extremely relevant. And just to add to the last point, most of the attacks that we are seeing right now is on the AppSec space. To give you a number, DDoS attacks is something that is very dear to me. I've been solving it since almost over a decade with varying organizations. Um, we have seen a 500% increase in layer 7 DDoS attacks on the application, that is web-based applications, HTTP floods, and so on and so forth. And that has made the AppSec even more relevant, right? So if nothing works, if you can't compromise it, if you can't do a data leak, launch layer 7 DDoS attack. So one thing that Akash was mentioning, we are having one of our customers who's been under attack since yesterday. So yeah, and it's still ongoing. And that is the setting the context here. It is relevant.
Got it. So thanks, Anshul. All the best with dealing with whatever your ongoing attack is. You did use one technical word, layer 7. Unless and until you are aware that there's something called TCP/IP and that there's something called OSI, you may not know what layer 7 is. But think of what he was saying was, everything is a web app. If it's internet facing, it has exposure. And if one application or one password gets compromised, that can be misused to compromise other things. And if there are many compromised applications and devices, that can make the life of Anshul and his team hell, because those are all application layer attacks, right? That's what I think in a very superficial manner we can take away. And because we are going towards massive rapid digitization, right? And I'm sure when you say we are 30th or someone is 5th, uh, that may mean in number of services, but the reality is when most of our population is access to digital services, there is nothing that comes close in scale, right? Maybe China does, but I think India and China, the scale is so vast that nothing else comes close, right? So that's good to know. That is why it is so critical. Sorry.
Scale is the other angle. A number of
Yeah,
services, one part, and scale is the other part.
yeah.
We have both challenges in India.
Both challenges, and bandwidth being the way it is, it's always a bigger challenge. Great. Tapendra, it's over to you. Why do you think API and app security is so critical, and why are you like helping developers stay secure?
So continuing with what's being mentioned by the movement and Anshul. So as we have seen, like the applications like always plays as a first point of contact for the user, and same goes for the hackers. So nowhere like the person sitting anywhere in the world, like if they want to access your organization, whatever the applications you have on the web-facing portals, like it can be able to come and exploit them. And when we talk about the APIs, so APIs are becoming like so almost like one of the most essential part of the modern apps, and that's where like all the different kind of applications are communicating with each another. And we definitely need to have some more robust mechanism to protect them. So when we talk about the risk, like so a lot of time what we have seen is the customers are utilizing any third-party APIs without doing any validations and all, and that's where a lot of risk poses. Mainly like if you are going with any open source or something, so the validations are the ones like that need to be done at the very uh, initial stage itself. And then there is a lot of like regulatory compliance also which is coming up, and where we need to see like what type of data is being transferred and whatever the criticality those APIs are handling. So on that basis, like the implementations need to be done. And this is like the third party, the way the third party is changing up. So we have seen a lot of things around it, and one like the APIs, whatever the things have been consumed by any of the organizations, so they need to be vetted correctly, and the proper authentications, authorizations need to be placed, and the checks need to be done. So we should not like just directly take them just of getting it like it's coming from a reliable source. Then also like a lot of things can happen on top of it. So that's the overall the points that I have for this, why the APIs are so critical in this modern age, and definitely like we need to come up with a more robust mechanisms to protect them. Like,
Got it. what I heard from you, in layman terms, that there are third parties that become that increase the risk, right? So, what are third parties? I think partners, vendors, different organizations talking to each other, all of that. You also mentioned authentication, authorization, just for the sake of assuming that there's a mixed audience. Authentication is someone identifying who they are to a system, and authorization is what are they allowed to do, access, read, write, whatever, right? So in that terms. And I think the big one which I want to kind of you all hinted at, but I want to just bubble up, is the fact that attacks are always evolving,
Yeah.
right? The landscape of what you know as attack is always changing, right? And that's the big one, because that's where the real complexity comes in. If the attacks were frozen in 1998, we would only have SQL injection the first time it was exploited, and people would know, okay, I have to solve it for scale, I have to do solve it by training developers, or I have to make sure the endpoint is safe. But the challenge really is they're evolving. um, a few months ago, I was at Nalcon, which is a conference that happens in Goa. One of the visitors was James Kettle, who is a researcher out of UK. His company, the company he works for, is called Portswigger, right? They make this really popular software called Burp Suite. And James and I go back when he was a teenager. The first time I interacted with him, he's done some amazing research on some of the newer attacks, right? And we don't even know the impact of those attacks when the attackers kind of pick those, right, around caching and stuff. So it's always changing, which is why it is so difficult, right? And which is why I want to make sure the audience understand that it's not enough to just say that, hey, but there's like a secure lock, why is it not safe, right? Why are you doing all this extra stuff? Because a lot of people believe that, hey, there's encryption, so it should be safe. We are talking about things which go beyond encryption. Even if data between two systems, customer, your browser and the bank is safe, the attack can still happen because it's beyond that, right, at the application layer. Great, I think that was really good. We want to switch gears now and talk about like things that people really care about. There is a rumor that Indian medical data has been put up for sale in the dark web, uh, which is the web that apparently we can't, regular people can't go to. But the scale of that again is meant to be massive. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's the worry people have, that hey, the government asks me to use this thing to only use online banking or online authentication. Pensioners have to go get a life certificate using Aadhaar. All that is happening, but I worry about my money. I worry about my account data, right? That's a worry people have. Even if the audience here is technical, they have other worries. They have family members, and all of us have that, right? Our parents are expected to now use these modern things which hardly make sense and keep changing, and they have to keep secure. So my question to each one of you, and I think I'm gonna like just pick you randomly this time, just so that we're mixing it up, is that I just want to hear from you, what is the worst form of application or API breach you have encountered? You don't have to give us any confidential details, right? But we do want to know, like, what was the impact? Now it doesn't have to be scale, it could be volume, but it could be like a personal story also. I want to hear from each one of you, and I think I'm going to start with Anshul. You're showing first now, so please.
Okay, so I'll present a scenario which happened with not my customer. So I help them in mitigating the attack. So on the sidelines, I do a lot of pro bono kind of stuff, helping people. Um, so this was basically an attack on a very large, new age startup, kind of a unicorn now, and this is an attack that I've seen multiple times across multiple enterprise. And the attack, we call it as attack on OTP APIs. So web applications, having also APIs with mobile clients. Now they thought that, yeah, my mobile client is secure, my web application is secure because I have put in a web application firewall, and the attack will get mitigated. And suddenly one fine day they start seeing that I have a lot of attacks getting generated on my OTP infrastructure. So how is that happening? Because their OTP API is unauthenticated. Because anybody who's logging in, so login page, you enter your phone number, and then you click on send button. That's an unauthenticated page, and you get an OTP. And then once you put it, that's when you log in. So what's happening here is that they have API infrastructure which is separate from the web application, and the web application is making a request to the API infrastructure to generate an OTP, and they are seeing a massive number of requests on their OTP API. The same API is also consumed by the mobile app. So the very first thing that they do is that how do we stop this attack? Because that's getting flooded. So what they ended up doing was, what is actually relevant in this case is to have a mobile SDK capability to protect and add additional layer of security between any communication between authenticated clients and your API infrastructure. So they added this mobile SDK for their web as well as for their mobile app. Um, Now, what happened was that despite adding this thing, they started seeing that my OTPs are still getting hammered by the same attack. So somehow the attacker was able to bypass it. Now, the mobile infrastructure is working fine, the mobile apps are working fine, but the API is still down. And the reason for that, and this is happening over a course of time, and I'm just helping them do it because they wanted somebody from outside to just wrap their heads around, what is going on and what should we do. And we have to work with what we have right now. The changing things at the last moment is tricky, so we have to figure things out. So I was helping them in that front. So what the attacker did was, he whenever he was going to the web page, there was a cookie. He was able to replay that cookie and make an API call. So despite the fact that they added mobile SDK to protect the APIs, they were still getting hammered because through the web application they were able to recreate the request as if it came from a genuine user, and there was no way for them to distinguish between a genuine request and the request coming from the attacker. So that was the incident that took place. Finally, the end result was the attack happened for a few days, and in the meantime we set up their infrastructure and with our app just for an interim period to mitigate the attack. And we added bot protection capability to identify whether the user was opening the browser and then making a request from the web application, or was he using a headless browser and then making a request. Distinguishing that helped us prevent the attacker from replay attacks, and from that onwards the attackers subsequently died down. So this is just an example where a very large organization, for a period of 5 days, they were hammered and there was nothing that they could do about it. And this is the application layer attack, just to give a summary. So the intent was not to compromise the application, but the intent was to bring it down.
Got it. Thank you so much. You actually there? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. For a moment you froze. Uh, there were many keywords: OTP, API, cookie, replay, API call, bot, headless browsers. But for the folks listening in, who understand what was said, great. But fundamentally, the software developers trusted a certain service to work a certain way. The trust was breached, and what they experienced was helplessness, right? And that's what I'm really want to get to. When we talk about security issues or when things go wrong, a lot of people forget the emotional element. uh, Imagine for 5 days you are doing something and it's still not working, and you need third party help, it's still not helping, right? And at some point you're like, hey, my business is struggling. I can't differentiate between who's a real user who really needs the OTP with someone who's not, right? Could be an automated program, or someone is like trying to actually bring my business down. That is not a nice feeling at all. So that's what I got from this sharing. Thank you so much, Anshul. I think Mohan, will go with you next. I really want to know why you thought it was like the worst breach, right? In your personal experience. Go on.
But I'll share the experience of researching some of the sensitive mobile applications, since we are, validating the security standpoint of some of the renowned BFSI organizations with their consent. We take it, we test it, we give them with our feedbacks and inputs for them to fix certain things in their mobile application. So we do reverse engineering with their permission. So we take the mobile application and just like any other hacker, how they will try to break open the source code and see what sensitive informations are available in the source code, right? So that's a typical reverse engineering. We do that time to time. We have done that for more than 100 different organizations, predominantly the banking, insurance, and many sensitive organizations. And while doing these activity, we always look for one common thing. Like, just for the sake of it, a lot of sensitive organizations, they have implemented the encryption, because just to hide the sensitive information, it is important to apply the encryption. So we were talking about mobile number, Aadhaar IDs, and all, right? So in case if you're going to transfer those critical information, sensitive information from your mobile device to the server, it is recommended to hide it with the best possible encryption that you can do, right? So a lot of developers have done that, and even they have the encryption technologies that they've used, the algorithms that they have used is definitely good. If you ask me, like people started using AES 256 and whatever the most recent modes of AES 256 they started doing, like we talk about GCM, people started using GCM over CBC and all that. But one common mistake that developers typically do is keeping the symmetric key, encryption key hard coded locally on the source code, right? So which means the encryption key for myself and the encryption key for the attacker is same, right? So once attacker managed to access the encryption key, then now he is capable of bringing down the entire system. So he can go and try to decrypt any payload, any data which is getting transferred. So he can at least first monitor, he can then manipulate, modify. So Akash was specifically talking about burp suit as a tool, right? So typically we use it, right? So we used to intercept the request and see what data is getting transferred. So if you see, we have evolved in terms of both cybersecurity enhancement, like almost all the organizations started using HTTPS with a belief that HTTPS will protect them. There is a security SSL certificate which will make sure I am trusting the endpoint, right? The node which I'm talking to. So I'm not going to talk to anyone else. We were even talking about OSA layers and all that. The first layer that we do is you do a handshake from your mobile device, and first you make sure that you're talking to someone who's trusted, right? Hey, I'm talking to this XYZ bank. Yes, this is XYZ bank. I can establish communication now. So typically the HTTPS helps in that scenario, but which can be bypassed. It can be easily bypassed with by Burpsuit as one of the tools. There are many other tools available in the market. So typically, if you are going to just validate the trust of the endpoint, which is not enough. If you're going to just do encryption just for the sake of it, is again not enough. How you are doing it, where you are, how you are dynamically changing it. So
Okay, Mohan, I'm going to
that
stop
is
you here. I'm going to stop you here. I want to hear about a breach, right? This
right.
is the next question, what you're
No, no.
describing.
The
So tell
breach
me about one breach,
having the
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, having the sensitive keys hard coded in the source code itself is a breach, which is
Okay.
being exploited actively today by many of the fraudsters. Right.
Got it. So
I don't
in
want to name
some
any bank.
critical infra is what you have seen, is what you're saying?
Yes, the UPI, I can say UPI applications. The
Got it.
traffic is being manipulated, modified. People are doing account takeover and trying to attack the the innocent victims. The very basic challenge that we see is having the sensitive encryption keys or something locally hard coded, right?
Got
So
it. Got it.
that leads
So,
to breach.
So sorry, in the interest of time, I'm gonna go to Tapendra, but just so that we can, clearly answer. Secret, your encryption key in the source code fundamentally means that there was this really massive safe. It was well built and everything, but the key to open the safe or the numbers you need to open the safe were pasted on right next to it, right? And that's a no. But developers don't really think about those things, and that's where you've seen. And it's really terrible because it's in UPI, which is all about money and people's money, and that's the first fear most people have about using, whether it's digital or anything related to that, right? That what will happen to my money and where will I go? Great. Sorry about that. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to go to Tependra to ask the same question. The most worst breach that you have come across, and why do you think it's this thing? Right? I want to hear the real
Okay.
details, not the technical details.
Hmm.
Okay, that's the next question.
Sure, sure. We just have came across with a one most exploited vulnerability discovered in the early 2023. That's a move it transfer EPs. So what has happened is like those EPs have been exploited by the attackers in a very different manners. So the major vulnerability was like the SQL injection was there, and move it like those who don't know like what's move it stands for. So it's a product of one company. So what they do like they provide uh, the product is help them to do the safe transfer of the files between the systems. So that's like widely being used all over the world. And those APIs were exploited, and there were the major vulnerabilities that we have seen is these SQL injections. So which has affected almost like a lot of industries all around the world, and many organizations got affected because of this. And that's where like we were being tracking it, and we've been finding it out how to help the customers who are utilizing our product and able to recognize it more efficiently. And with the mitigation steps also, that's where like we were working on that side of it, because this was almost like a biggest challenge that during that span that was being faced up. And still like there are a lot of new variants which have been coming up, and that's what we are being seeing it. So we are going on to coming up with a more better ways to fix these kind of vulnerabilities, whichever comes in the future. It won't give that level of the effect like to the organizations what we have seen with this kind of vulnerability. So that this was the one like which I just have came up recently, and it was biggest challenge for us also to come up with
Got
those remediation steps and all.
got it. So I have a story here, and then we'll quickly move on. This happened to the world once. Apparently, it's all rumored. We just have heard stories that there was like these weapons of exploitation created by some uh, nation state agency, which got leaked somehow. They ended up in the hands of attackers, the bad guys, and then when they were able to use those security issues to exploit or backdoor a Ukrainian software, tax software. And using that tax software, they were able to get into certain other organizations. And then once they got there, they were able to, infect like majority of the world. And this attack, I think, was called Petya, not Petya, I forget the name now. But this is the point about, that one compromise can lead to other compromises, right? And it's just the speed of things getting infected. Then banks stopped, hospitals stopped, and that's like from my recent memory, that was like really really terrible. Because if banks stop, hospitals stop, people's lives basically are at risk, right? And a lot of times we don't really worry about, or we don't think about technology doing that. But all of that is a challenge that the panelists face day in and day out when they help you and others stay safe and secure. Great, thank you so much. I think this is really useful to kind of set the personal tone. People need to really understand how critical this is to their lives and how close it is. It's not like that's something happening on a TV screen far away, but it's like on their device while they're holding it. And people use mobiles a lot, right? That's happening. So coming to the next question, I think Mohan already started on that. What are the most effective mitigation methods to secure APIs, right? And this is where you can get technical for sure. But what I would really want is you should talk about the general information, but also like in your product, what is that secret sauce that you have added, what you have identified, ki, hey, doing this is very critical. It may not be a technical thing, it could be actually a behavioral thing. Because fundamentally, in the end, either your product is built for developers who are building things, builders, or your product is created for operators, the people who have to like make sure stuff stays safe while it is running critical applications, right? So what's the secret sauce? What's your really I would say the insight that you have tried to strive to put in your product or your service, or the way you convey? This is important. And I think we want to finish this section by 12:10, so around 5-6 minutes each. So you have the time. Please set the stage, keeping in mind there's a mixed audience, but go for it. Who wants to go first? I'll give you a choice this time.
Okay, I'll start.
Perfect.
Since
Go
I
on.
already started talking about certain mitigation
Yeah.
slightly out of the initial question, so I'll just start from there.
Perfect.
So technically, as I already started talking about the sensitiveness of the endpoint, the mobile application, since that's our focus area where we try to make it as secure as possible, at the same time as simplified as possible for the end user, the genuine end user. Like, we are trying to make it stringent for attackers and hackers, but at the same time, the security should be definitely simplified for end user, right? So what is the attack surface? In our case, it is ultimately the mobile device and the mobile application that we are protecting, right? So the first layer of security that we do is we make sure the end user who's using the mobile application, right, should know a little bit about cybersecurity. So in India today, we are seeing a lot of smartphone users, but definitely you cannot call everybody as smart as the way they are using it. Like at the end, when they try to use the mobile application, there are a lot of security challenges emerging from the device itself, the kind of the settings that you have in your device and the kind of network you're connected to. Typically, we talk about the open Wi-Fi. You get connected to open Wi-Fi where passwordless Wi-Fi, the protocols used by the Wi-Fi, if it is not safe, ultimately that will lead to data leakages. So what we have to do to mitigate these challenges is validate the sanity of the endpoint, right? So I would always call it, have a zero trust for your client, because all the client side controls at some point can be bypassed, can be broken, right? So, but ultimately, it is important to validate what is the current security standpoint of the device, of the network, of your own application which is being used. So specifically to talk about, we have to see the behavior of user. What is the current network user is connected to? Whether it's a proxy network, whether it's a VPN network. There are VPN which helps you to uh, add a security layer. A proxy over VPN definitely helps you to do an encryption, but attackers use it to monitor and change the payload, the sensitive information, right? So if let's say you're using banking application, it is not like WhatsApp. You're not going to use it throughout the day, right? For that moment, make sure you're not connected to open Wi-Fi. For that moment, you make sure that the network is safe, the device is safe, the configuration is safe. Today, we are talking about regulators. RBI is coming very strong. RBI is giving a lot of recommendations in the form of DPSC, Digital Payment Security Control, right? And it is actually encouraging all the banks to make sure that how the mobile device is protected. You can actually give a lot of recommendation to a user. For example, if user is trying to use network which is not safe, open Wi-Fi, and if user is using a device where there are certain malwares which is actively, taking the API, the communication, which is, taking the data out. So all these recommendations are in place. So, in a way, RBI is even doing a lot of audit to make sure every bank is following and adhering to the guidelines that they are giving. So in a way, the applications that we are using is safe. But when we talk about the mitigation, ultimately we have to go a little further. The API security, we have to start using slightly age-old, but it is still relevant. Most of the organizations are not even doing the API security through additional layers of, we talk about OAuth 2.0, we talk about jailability, right? So which means you validate every single user, you authenticate user to do specific set of activity, right? So not everybody is going to do everything. So API security in the form of tokens is very much important. You can very well use OAuth or you can use jailability, which is one of the recommendation. And two, never use symmetric key, never use a common encryption key for all the user. It has to be per user, per session encryption key. Each user should have their own encryption key. At each session, when a kill open the application, the next session should have a different encryption key. So if one of the attacker managed to access the encryption key, he cannot take it and do a replay attack with the second victim, right? So ultimately, make it dynamic. Try to use per user per session encryption. If you're using encryption, don't keep it symmetric. Don't keep it symmetric. And to the organizations, educate your developers. It is very much important because the lack of awareness can lead to a lot of challenges. I've seen developers just to hide the sensitive information. They didn't even do encryption. They do just encoding. They do base 64. So base 64 is going to hide. Like if I have mobile number, if I'm going to base 64, it'll hide the information, but I can go to Google, I can transform it back, I can do a decoding of it, right? Encoding is different from encryption, which is still a gap in the market. A lot of developers, they don't even understand it. Like it's a very basic thing. Like if you ask me, it's a basic thing, but a lot of developers, they try to just hide it just to satisfy the security tester. If there is a security tester who's giving recommendation, hey, see, I have hidden the sensitive information. So how you hidden the sensitive information, right? Whether you are hiding it with encryption or you're trying to do it with encoding is a very big question, right? Hashing, a lot of people, even today, they don't understand the difference between encryption, encoding, and hashing. What exactly are using it plays a major role in the API security at the end. How the sensitive information is hidden is important. So educate your developers, choose the right encryption and hashing technologies. Uh, just to give one more example, we were talking about UPI. Now India is actually upgrading from UPI. From UPI, we are going to CBDC, right? So soon we are going to use digital currency, ERP applications. One very big step regulators have taken, as I see now with UPI, regulators have given recommendation to all the banks to implement the security practices. But there are, 500 different UPI applications we can see, right? And the payment service providers are almost around 200. It is really difficult to bring everybody to a common page. So now for CBDC application, NPCA has taken it on them, right? They have created the base version of security. So anybody who's going to come up with a mobile application, the base layer of security is given by regulators. So, another recommendation here is if you are doing something, if it is going to be open API, we talk about open API. UPI is the classical example of open API, right? Anybody can you leverage the API given by any bank. You go register with them and use it like Google Pay, Phone Pay, WhatsApp. We are doing payment, and all of them are actually using the open API exposed by the banking infrastructure, right? So ultimately, the open API is being used by the endpoint, the mobile devices at the end, right? So it is very much important each of them when they develop their mobile application to make sure they have the uh, proper security sanity. And in the next EUP application, the regulators have taken it on them. Now they made sure that there is no different security implemented for different application. All the applications are using the best of the security, whatever is available today, and it is dynamic. When we talk about security, it is going to evolve. There are emerging threats coming in different forms. So it becomes a little easier. If somebody has to elevate the security, it is as simple as NPC has to elevate it, right? So all the mobile application, whoever is going to leverage that open API will be protected easily. So that is change I
On
can
that
see.
point, Mohan, I'm gonna interrupt. I want to give opportunity to Tapendra and Anshul also. Just to recap
Yes.
what you said, you started by talking about that, hey, there's a lot of mobile apps, and that's where your area of expertise is. And security has to kind of have a trade-off with usability. It should be easy to use and secure. And
Right.
your recommendations were network need to be safe, so not open Wi-Fi and stuff. So zero trust is important. And RBI has guidelines around digital payment security controls. That's something that app builders should definitely look at who are building for finance. You spoke about encoding, encryption, and hashing, and not people not knowing the difference. The fundamental difference in easy things is like encryption requires always a key, and you get the original thing that you encrypted back. Hashing is where the original thing is destroyed. You never get it back, but it kind of gives you a certain type of integrity check. And then you did talk about CBDC and UPI, which are new things for me. But the underlying point is that there is baseline standards being created so that everyone's security is elevated, right? That's a great
Right.
point. My only challenge with monoculture, this comes from experience of being there when Microsoft came out with in 2000 that, hey, let's be secure, we're the ultimate OS, is that when they that monoculture is not secure, then
Right.
everyone becomes insecure, right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
uh,
So it becomes single point of
unfortunately,
failure.
yeah, unfortunately, sometimes our because of the scale that India has, when India stack is developed and there are some architecture choices made, some other things tend to be a little neglected for that time, right? But coming to Tapendra and Anjul, we have around 7 minutes total. So maybe 3 minutes each on what are the most effective mitigation methods to secure APIs according to you. Who wants to go next?
You
Okay,
want to
I'll,
go
I'll
or
yeah,
so?
I'll take it up.
Oh, I love the enthusiasm. Anjul, go first.
Okay, so see, one of the things that we need to understand is what's interesting about AppSec is that it is there are three different teams that are involved. There's the infrastructure team, there's the developer who's building the application, and there's the security team. And many a times, what I've seen is that these teams are typically not in sync. The security part is managed by somebody else, but they do not know what is going on the application level. So and the infrastructure level are looking only at the network side, or they do not know what understand about what is going on at the application level either. So we've seen this kind of a thing happen on multiple occasions. One of the things that I can recommend is there are a lot of basic steps that we can take other than the tooling part, which can get you at a good posture. So for that being, there should be security by design, having all the three teams in sync before you start writing code or designing your infrastructure and your applications. That is one of the things that also comes from my experience as an auditor. The other thing that I see is that there is a completely different aspect of shadow APIs, which is coming on the API side, where we are rolling out different versions of APIs, uh, keeping the older version still intact because we have older clients who are still connecting to it. And after a point in time, those APIs do become vulnerable because yeah, they're still there in the system and they're not getting cleaned up, right? The third thing that I want to talk about is about how those APIs are being used. We are talking about so UPI. There was this recent incident about in villages where Aadhaar-based authentication is being used and money is being siphoned off by the middleman who's just fooling the villagers who do not understand how things are working. So education is important. At the same time, how to use those, consume those APIs is also important. It's not that Aadhaar APIs were not secure. It's just that how they are being misused is a completely different angle inside of it. So that is one more aspect. From the security point of view, security controls are very important. So WAF or DDoS or load balancers, not just because I'm making it, it is actually relevant. What is also important is that if you have those controls, you have to go back and revisit very often, as in when you are having new releases going. whether those security policies make sense or they need to be fine-tuned. And that is where we've seen that, yeah, I bought all the technologies under the sun, yet I got breached. Why? Because my security solution was not in blocking mode. So what's the point of having that security solution if you're not using it, right? So that would be my broad takeaway. For those of you who do not know, we also have a free version of a solution that is used across 50 plus countries. So if you don't have anything right now, you need something to get started, you can always go and give it a try. It's a lifetime free solution. So yeah, that's my take.
Awesome. Great. Just to recap, the way you see the world, when you think of effective mitigation, is that there are three types of teams: infrastructure, developers, and security, right? And security by design is what you really think is effective, right? Effective does not mean it's easy. Just to get that highlighted. The second thing you meant was team alignment, where teams are aligned, they're on the same page, which again, while should be done, is never really easy. That's where a lot of challenges happen. Then you spoke about shadow APIs, that we should be worried about them for compatibility reasons. We keep using the old ones, but that visibility needs to be there. Maybe there needs to be a process around end of life on,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, but other things get missed. When you talked about the Aadhaar issue, I think you meant the Aadhaar enabled payment systems, AEPS. That's where the siphoning off is
How,
happening.
how
Is that
can
what?
APIs can be misused if you do
Got
not
it.
think about who's the end consumer and how they should use it.
Perfect. So like the use cases, the developers of this system thought of the use cases, but did not really spend too much time on the abuse cases, right? In the case of Aadhaar, limit, linked to payment systems, but that's always the case, right? Scope creep is a challenge. Relevant security controls are important. They should not be rituals. Rituals are things we do without thinking, but as in the world changes, the landscape changes, the process should update, and you should really question that, hey, is this WAF actually serving the purpose, or it should be in a block mode or log mode. Perfect. I don't think you should ever say that, hey, this is important because you make it. I think it is important because you make it. You have dedicated your career and your made the bet that these controls are what will help you stay secure. So that's perfect. And I would say take up Anshul on his offer. There's a free version, and I don't know how you will get through. Maybe you can put that in the chat or something for others, how they can figure out where the
Sure.
free version is, right? Because see, this is the whole point. This is not about that, hey, you're a vendor and you can't talk about your product. Without the ecosystem, nothing can stay secure, right? And the fact that there is an ecosystem, there are payment linked to identity and people are using them, and there's a push from the government, is because this is the need of the hour. There is no other way to do this, right? Perfect. So Tapendra, I'm sorry, you have like 2 minutes. What are the effective
No problem. Yeah.
mitigation controls?
So just continuing with what Anshul mentioned, so security by design, definitely that's one of the most essential requirement which every company needs to have today. And that's where like even our product comes, we are not focusing on like auditing the applications once it is deployed somewhere in the staging or in the dev in the production environments. So we focus mainly like they can start testing their application while they are developing it, so that the chances of fixing, like obviously like when we go for fixing any specific vulnerabilities in that phase, it's quite easy and it's quite cheaper comparatively to fix something in the production. And so second point, the effectiveness, more effective mitigation methods are like definitely they need to have some more strong authentications and authorization mechanisms. And they also need to do the complete testing of them. It's not only just about implementing those measures. A lot of time, like the developers are doing, like they just for the sake of a feature or just for the sake of a or like the requirement, like they used to put that thing, but how effective that has been implemented, that is again the big question. So the detailed testing need to be done on top of it. That's where it's needed. And what we have seen as till now, like in our journey, so a lot of organizations are facing a challenges because they're developing in number of EVAs within a span of time, and after that they are still not knowing like what exactly is in the use, what's not in the use, and that's where like the API discovery comes. And we need to have a more efficient solutions, like what we are also providing, that with our own product, and you can get all the available APIs, whatever is there within your organizations, and you can check them like what is there in use and which if it's not in the use and that you need to remove, or so that any excess, the hacker, most of the time the attackers are looking only for those APIs which you are not at all using, but still it's available in your systems. So the complete, the regular accessing like more discovery need to be, the efficient discovery need to be there, and the proper documentations need to be around them. So whatever the things which are not in use, so they can avoid them, can remove them from their system itself. Then effective log monitoring need to be in a place, and that's where like they need to see what is passing through their APIs, and if they are finding any cases where something is not happening correctly, like they can block those requests. So the effective monitoring system need to be in a place where they can investigate any suspicious activity which is happening through those APIs. Effective rate limitations and all, these are the various basic methods which need to be placed, and that's where like many of the organizations still lacks. And then the regular audits need to be performed, so that's what we can suggest. So because a lot of new vulnerabilities we are seeing, and as the threat landscape is evolving, so we need to do a regular testing. It should not be like a quarterly or a yearly testing. It should be like whenever you are coming up with any new feature, or it need to be a part of your whole DevOps pipeline. So that's where like the DevSecOps comes, and we can initiate those scans and perform all the kind of checks which need to be there. So the last point that I'll mention that is related to the education, that's very important. So the developers, if you see from the developers' perspective, from the organizer perspective, their focus is just to release that application. So they don't worry more about like how secure it is, or whatever the what are the methods or the steps they have taken in order to prevent those, in order to secure their own APIs and all. So that need to be educated. Like they need to focus on that part also. It should not only be like just a functionality thing need to be there in an application, but the security is also very crucial, because at the end, like it will going to impact their whole business if something breaks. So these are the methods and the steps like I'll suggest for this. So effective implementation need to be done on end-to-end manner.
Got it. I think you covered a lot. I think you covered some of the points of the next question also. But just to recap, fixing is cheaper if you do it before your code hits production. Strong authentication authorization mechanisms. Mohan spoke about it uh, earlier from a point of view of that, hey, are you doing encryption, encoding, and whatever? And then there are these new ways, JWT, OIDC2, OAuth 2.0, and stuff like that. Continuous testing and surfacing APIs, right? So you're referring to the vulnerability, the visibility aspect of that. There are a variety of APIs installed. Whether you discover them after the fact or you are aware of, okay, I have these versions of APIs. I think Anshu also spoke about it. The keyword for me was regular, right? You said everything has to be done regularly, which is what Anshu was
Yeah.
talking about, that, hey, it needs to be a process, not a ritual. My big challenge, right? And it's apt that I'm the moderator and all three of you are the panelists, is like I have seen it all. I've been doing this for 25 years now, 20 odd years in the industry. People always, it's difficult to change them, right? No
Yeah.
matter what you say, that they will get educated, they will basically sleep through the developer ITSMS training that they'll get. You say that they will have documentation, the documentation will never be updated, right? You are company owners, you know that, right? Mohan, you run the team, engineering team. It never happens. uh, and I want to make sure the audience understand, this is an interesting story from the launch of this gaming console called PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 was like a revolution when it came out. It's by this company called Sony, and it could play games in a resolution and stuff that others could only dream of. And it was so far ahead of the competition, Microsoft Xbox, that for a while Microsoft thought they could not compete in gaming. The interesting bit was that to play certain games, there was some disk, let's just call it encryption for the lack of a better word. I don't want to introduce a new word like a DRM here, which meant that a teenager sitting somewhere in suburbs of North America, I forget what, he was an American or a Canadian, He was like, hey, how is this disk not playing for me? I just got it from my friend. And the answer was something was checking the validity of the disk. So simplistic thinking, he was like, hey, I'm pretty sure the value for whatever is checking is in the PlayStation 3 itself. And the most amazing part was that I think he was 15 or 14 at that point, so ridiculous young age. His name was Geo Hearts. He figured out that there was a key, and if he had broadcasted the key that hey, this is the secret key inside of every PlayStation console ever sold, that would have been illegal in the country he was in. But what he did was he printed a T-shirt with the key, which is not illegal, right? So it became like a cultural phenomena. It was like almost like a people were like, hey, I don't, if I buy a game, it should be mine. I don't want you to figure out. But the architecture change that Sony did beyond that for PlayStation 4 was that they realized that that key cannot exist in its entirety in the console, but some part of it has to come from the internet, right? So they basically created an API to check that whether the console has the proper permissions or not. And as and when the games, even if a game has been launched long back, like Call of Duty or whatever, they keep getting updated just for this check, right? So it's an interesting world, and if Sony has problems keeping stuff secure, so it's okay, right? You can go in that direction. Well, most of you may not know about this about me. I wrote a book on Burp Suite in 2013, right? I was a big believer of that application security works. I don't anymore. I think everything has to be solved at the infra layer because that's where the real impact can be. But when I wrote the book, I really thought the developers will learn. What I realized later, and I got a lot of people coming to me that the book really helped them, were pen testers. The people who took tests, they were like, I love the book. It made it so easy for me to hack into applications. I was like, but that was not the idea. I was going for a different outcome. So unexpected outcomes are a reality of the world. And in that way, that's why we are in business, right? The opportunity exists. So this is the best way to kind of bring us to the next point, where I want like 2-word answers, and I'm giving an extra word. Each one of you quickly on like an organization now wants to start on API and application security today in 1 or 2 words, not more. I'll cut you off, right? What are the things that they need to do? You can give maximum 2 suggestions, 2 words each. Tapendra, go first.
So two word, I'll suggest comprehensive API discovery and the continuous assessment that need to be done.
Perfect. That's great. Anshul?
Security design and WAF.
Okay. It's your turn. Mohan.
Endpoint behavioral validation, zero trust by design.
Got it. Oh wow. Okay. So the cool thing is what all three of them are saying is like there are these new things that you have to pick up around behavioral analysis, continuous security testing, and that is what will help you because the world is so I would say hostile towards anything which is internet exposed. At this point, I think we can pause and take questions if there are any. Narika, do you have any questions by the audience?
I cannot see any questions.
Okay, so I can see there are attendees here. Do you have any questions for the panelists? We would love to answer them. They are here to just do that for the next 10 more minutes that we have of the webinar. And here is your opportunity to get the answer from the expert, themselves. While we wait, I hope this was interesting for you folks as much as it was for me. I got like 4 pages of notes out of this. So
So, just one question I wanted to ask that are there any emerging technologies or trends that are particularly relevant to API security? Like nowadays we have this AI, blockchain, IoT. So how these emerging technologies are important for API security or how they are going to affect API security?
I think it's open to all. So go ahead if
Yeah.
each one of you
So
take a stab at
I
it.
have to say about these emerging technologies. Yeah, there are more pain than gain. So you can go through ChatGPT and build a script to launch an attack, which is like you don't have to be a developer to do that. And the other thing that I would like to say is that the mindset that I've seen from developer side, including my technical team, they see a new technology and they jump at it. Like, oh, this is so nice. Look at
Shiny toy.
serverless for so let's give it a try. Oh, let's try this new version of Angular or new version of React Native. Let's play with it. You need to think it through, that okay, yeah, it's fun to try new things, but consider the security first, and then you think whether it makes business sense, whether it makes a sense from security point of view is as relevant. So my take is that yeah, technology is good. Let's use it, but you also use it for the better, not for the worse.
Nice. Tapendra, Mohan, do you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just totally
So
agree. You can.
yes,
So
Tapendra,
just
go ahead.
totally agree with the Anshul. Like a lot of new things are happening up, and we have seen the evolution of the GPTs, BART, and various other models. But we need to use them in a more like we first need to understand like what's the best practice to use them in a secure way. So it's not like just give it a try and whatever the data they want, just provide you. So those are the measures and the awareness need to be there. Then all the technical developers and to all the audience like so that will be my take on this.
So now we have a
I
question by
Yes.
Akhila. So it's like, does HTTPS make it any effective for APIs as a starter or security like JWT or Zero Auth has to be used?
Who wants to take that?
Yes. So HTTPS definitely helps. HTTPS is your first layer of defense, I would say. But ultimately, that is the layer which can be, bypassed. So Akash was talking about both suit as a tool. More than me, possibly he would add a lot of aspects to it. In a way, the tool that helps you to intercept certain requests, the tool that helps you to, analyze and monitor how the data is being transferred and all. Right. So ultimately, just having HTTPS is not enough. It is important to have one layer of security because security ultimately should be a multi-layer security, right? You should have a multiple layer for any intentional attacker to break open different gates. It's not just the one lock, one key which will help you, right? So you need to have a multi-layer security and encryptions and OAuth JWTs will help you in terms of preventing the replay attacks. uh, it is always about how the attackers are going to break your solution, right? So you need to have different layers of protection around it.
So I'll add to that. I think, Akhila, the answer is that for you to effectively, for you to be sure that OAuth, JWT, anything like that is effective, it has to be over HTTPS, right? Because otherwise, if the data has no integrity, if the both sides can't, confirm that the data has integrity, all bets are off, anyways, right? And to the previous question, Niharika, what I want to say is that chat GPT and other tools will make more programmers from non-technical backgrounds. As Anshul said, that he was talking about the attackers will have the ability to create scripts. I'm saying more programs will be created, more programs will be hosted, more applications will be created and hosted, and these applications and programs are definitely going to talk to third parties, right? Chat GPT is going to revolutionize the number of applications built by people who are from non-technical, non-engineering backgrounds, right? And when that happens, it's just going to be more of this, whatever we're talking about, right? So I think it's a great opportunity.
So many tools which are no code app tools where you can drag and drop and make an app
Yeah.
straight. So they already exist. It's just going to accelerate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Akhila is saying that I understand it's a better practice to keep changing the private key used for encryption.
Exactly, that's the perfect approach. So that's what I call it per user per session encryption key. Every session, create a new encryption key, use the public key, private key pair, uh, generate the encryption key in your server side, encrypt it with a private key, give it to the client, use the public key, private key, possibly RSA encryption will help you, right? So ultimately, that will make sure the common symmetric key is not compromised, right? So that is the way to go.
Also, one more question that what should be the learning roadmap for those who want to enter learning application security, and what should be the building blocks of the domains for people who want to enter, who want to begin their application security journey?
You should read Akash's book.
No, it's too obsolete. Don't
Well,
do that. I think start with
like
OWASP. I think the
we'll be
OWASP website is more
mentoring it.
updated.
WASP. WASP, you get everything. You get the how you can compromise something, how you can protect everything. So you get to see the both sides of the coin. So ultimately, that's the way to start. Definitely, that will help.
Also, there is one more question to Mr. Mohan. This is from Kiran from Appness, Inter, Inter, Interactive Bangalore. And this is dedicated question to Mr. Mohan. It says that some mentioned that each request it is good to maintain a dynamic key. Yes, we tried that. It's good in security wise, but we face slight delay in creating dynamic key that is handshake and verified from bed. Can you please guide me how to handle this kind of scenario?
I can definitely do that. It's a big architecture in itself. If I'm going to talk about each of the layer, how we can do that. Yes, it adds a little bit of latency because you have to make one API call to get the encryption key for that particular session. Just to simply put, possibly you can have the pre-authenticated tokens stored locally in your client side. To make it a little faster for the next API to kickstart, you don't have to look for the new encryption key, something which is pre-authenticated, but ultimately how you are storing it, where you are storing it. You need to make sure, in case if you're talking about mobile device, the mobile device should not be a rooted mobile device, right? If it is a rooted mobile device, somebody can peek into it, somebody can take it. So you need to have a complete sanity validation. The pre-authenticated tokens will help in certain case to make sure the latency is avoided. But if you're going to talk about the banking use cases, it doesn't take even a second. The number of applications that we are providing the SaaS solution today, it is negligible at the end. It doesn't take a lot of time to complete this full cycle of it. We can
Do you think
definitely
like if
discuss
we are
about it
using
separately later.
those, if it's like a Defi helmet, it's already doing a dynamic key, right? That's what is that the question about, or some non-standard practice here?
I think they tried and it added certain latency to their entire application. So
So usually, I think Kiran, also to add to that, HTTP2 has helped in this for you to able to like resume the encrypted session, and some caching is in place, but it actually depends on the devices. I think even the fact that if the platform check is happening, it's not a rooted device every single time. If your app is doing that, that adds more latency, because that's a CPU bound blocking check. But depending on the critical nature of what the application does, some latency might be desirable. I don't know. It's not an easy answer. I think you want to
yes,
take Mohan's coordinates and check with him offline as well.
sure. 100% I can do that. Possibly I'll share my coordinates here. We'll connect and discuss.
So we are at time now. Should we take one question and
I
close?
can see one hands up from Tirumala Rao Kadiyam, but I'm not sure what. So if you have any question, you can post it on the question thing.
I guess they can't really speak in this webinar mode, so they have to paste the question in
In the
the chat
question.
box, right? I got it.
There's a different question section. We have to post it there.
Yeah.
questions, so I think we should wrap up the session.
Cool. I just want to thank all the three panelists for making the time on a Saturday morning. They could have been doing anything else, but they're here educating us, and I really enjoyed it. This was really great. Learned a lot, and yeah, that's all I had to say. Thanks, Niharika, for the invitation, and the SCI for organizing this. Do you want to say anything else?
Thanks,
Thank you.
Niharika, for
Yeah.
moderating the panel. And thanks, Tapendra and Mohan. We learn. I also learned quite a new things today from you guys. So we should also get in touch and share this knowledge and then spread it across.
Awesome.
Yes, knowledge always helps, and
Yeah.
it has to be, it should spread, right? So,
Nice.
thanks to Akash and Shul and Tapendra for sharing your knowledge. It's a wonderful platform. A lot of good new learning for me. Thanks to DSA team for organizing such wonderfully session today.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
same for DSA team to organizing this. And thanks for Akash for moderating the session so amazingly. Like, yeah,
It was really very well moderated, Akash. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you for accepting this. Thank you for taking in your hand. And thank you, Tapen. Thank you, Anshul. Thank you, Mr. Mohan, for pitching in last moment, last minute. It was really great. This whole session was really insightful, I guess. I am 100% sure that the audience must have taken a lot. Thank you so much.
Awesome. It was a
Thanks,
pleasure and my
everyone.
privilege. Bye. Take care.
okay.
Enjoy your day.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Thank you so much, guys. All right.
Bye.